The desert remembers what men forget. It remembers blood spilled on its sand, the secrets whispered to the wind, and the weight of footsteps that thought themselves too light to matter. That morning, when the Galactic scouts set their boots upon Earth's dunes, the desert stirred as though in anticipation, and somewhere in its silence, a single man listened. The scouts arrived in gleaming lines, their armor refracting light into blinding prisms. They were tall, elegant beings, crystalline in structure, voices ringing with the chime of glass struck by iron. Their rifles were alien wonders, glowing tubes of compressed light capable of burning through steel at half a mile. They carried themselves with the assurance of conquerors, and as they looked upon Earth's defenders, their contempt was unmasked. The defenders were farmers' sons, veterans dragged out of retirement, a smattering of National Guard volunteers with gear so weathered it seemed embarrassed of itself. Their rifles were scratched, duct-taped in places, relics from wars long past. The scouts studied the weapons with amusement, the way a king might regard a child wielding a wooden sword. Captain Zaethal, their commander, stepped forward. His form glistened with refracted sunlight, eyes faceted like diamonds, his voice a metallic echo. These are the weapons of Earth. Antiquities? Rifles forged of iron and gunpowder? You mean to challenge the Galactic Concord with such fossils? The laughter of the scouts was a chorus of cruel bells. Among the humans, unease spread like a stain. They shifted in their boots, glancing sidelong at each other. Some tried to mask their fear with bravado, whispering sarcastic comments about Florida Man or muttering about how this might end up as the next reality TV spectacle. A reporter scribbled frantically into a notepad, his trembling voice caught on a hot mic. If this doesn't go viral, nothing will. Yet even through the mockery, a strange hush fell when one man stepped forward from the human ranks. Corporal Elias Vance. He did not stride with pomp, nor look heroic. His ghillie suit hung ragged, threads of burlap and desert brush stitched together with patience and necessity. Dust coated his boots, his rifle scarred with age and use. His eyes, half hidden beneath the camouflaged hood, held no pride, only calm. He carried rejection with him like a second weapon. The girl who had turned away, the father who had sighed at his silences, the town that whispered he was odd, too strange, too quiet. He lived with cats that were not his, ate microwave burritos at odd hours, and muttered Chuck Norris jokes as though they held some forgotten truth. If dignity had abandoned him, the desert had not. Zaethal's lip curled. This is your champion? A man who dresses as shrubbery? Where is your artillery? Where are your drones and exosuits? Surely you jest. The human commander did not answer. His silence was the desert silence, heavy and enduring. Instead, he gave Elias Vance a single nod. Vance lowered himself to one knee. The world shrank to the circle of his scope. He breathed in, slow, steady. He exhaled, steady still. The laughter of the scouts grew shrill, echoing across the dunes like cruel children mocking a beggar. The desert listened. He curled his finger around the trigger. A crack split the air, sharp and ancient as thunder. One of the scouts fell, crystalline body shattering in a spray of shards and dust. For the first time, their laughter stopped. The humans gasped, stunned by what their eyes told them. The impossible had occurred. An Earth rifle, obsolete and scorned, had torn through alien armor designed to deflect plasma fire. The scouts hissed in disbelief. Impossible. Your ballistics are crude. Your range inferior. That was chance. Vance did not answer. He adjusted, found another target shimmering in the haze. Another breath. Another pull. Another scout fell, armor smoking. Now panic rippled through their ranks. The elegance of conquerors faltered, replaced with the sudden realization of vulnerability. They spread out, scanning the dunes with beams of ultraviolet light. But the ghost had already melted into sand and stone. Among the humans, whispers flared like fire. Hashtags bloomed on devices. Hashtag Earth Sniper. Hashtag Duct Tape wins. Hashtag Chuck Norris approves. Even the gossips in town found new verses. It's where I saw him fix that rifle with duct tape once. Figures. No alien can beat duct tape. The scouts pressed forward, furious. Their weapons carved molten glass into the dunes, each blast a scream of power. Yet the man they sought had vanished into the folds of silence. Vance moved low, each breath measured, each shift in the sand deliberate. The desert accepted him, shrouded him, and in return he gave it patience. Through their scanners, they saw nothing. Yet their comrades kept falling one by one. At 20 meters, one scout caught a glimpse, a ripple in the sand, a flicker of burlap. He raised his rifle, but Vance was faster. The shot rang out. The alien collapsed with a cry that rattled like breaking glass. The others froze. They had never seen fear in their own kind before. Their commander trembled, his crystalline skin fracturing faintly under the weight of unease. He shouted into the silence, voice brittle. "What are you?" Vance rose then, just enough for his outline to be seen against the horizon, a phantom born of dust and patience. His rifle rested against his shoulder, his face still hidden beneath the hood of desert camouflage. His answer was dry, almost amused, a whisper carried by wind. Just a man with bad aim and infinite patience. The words struck harder than bullets. The scouts recoiled as though struck, for patience was something they had never faced. An enemy who would wait forever, who would turn rejection into endurance and silence into strength. The desert, satisfied, whispered back its approval in the shifting sands. And to you, who listen now, remember this. The world will laugh at your weakness, sneer at your scars, mock the tools you carry. Yet sometimes the very things they scorn are the ones that will save you. Patience, ridicule, rejection, they may cut deep, but wielded with quiet resolve, they can become sharper than any blade. Never let their laughter bury you. Let it be the wind at your back as you take aim at destiny. The desert does not scream when it is wounded, it glitters. Where alien rifles tore the sand into molten glass, strange patterns shimmered, as though the earth itself were marked with scars of fire. In those glowing veins, the Galactic scouts searched desperately, their armor glowing with fury. Yet for every beam they fired, another of their kin collapsed under the sharp crack of a human rifle, ancient and merciless. Corporal Elias Vance moved like dust caught in a patient breeze. His ghillie suit blurred against the stones, his breath steady, his heart measured. He did not consider himself a hero. He was simply a man who had been overlooked long enough to master invisibility. Once in town, he had been a shadow behind the loud voices, the boy passed over in conversation, the soldier whose name never appeared on commendations. Now that invisibility was his weapon. The scouts were unraveling. Their discipline, once flawless, broke into frantic bursts of shouting. "He moves without trace." One howled, their voice sharp and crystalline. "He must carry cloaking technology," another insisted. But when they scanned the dunes with their alien sensors, they saw only sand, stone, and a faint trace of duct tape glinting on a battered rifle. Vance whispered dryly to himself, "If duct tape holds my barrel, maybe it holds this whole damn planet together." He smiled at his own bitterness, then stilled his breath and fired again. Another scout fell. The humans who watched from behind broken barricades erupted in whispers that were almost prayers. He got another one. "Swear he's not even human. He's some kind of desert ghost. Florida man's cousin, maybe." The farmer who'd mocked earlier spat again into the sand. "Boys straighter than Sunday gossip. Lord save us." But victory was never without price. The aliens adapted. Their commander, Zaethal, raised a shimmering shield across the battlefield, crystalline barriers that bent the air with refracted light. The scouts fanned out, not in arrogance now, but in cold fury, rifles humming with lethal power. Each shot they fired split the air with thunder, gouging molten craters in the earth. Vance crawled low, heat scorching his palms, lungs filling with dust. His camouflage blurred him from sight, but he could feel the noose tightening. He had lived his life believing he was forgettable, replaceable. Yet here he was, the entire weight of Earth's resistance leaning upon his silence and his aim. A beam cut the air above him, close enough that the heat seared his hood. The dune collapsed beneath the blast, showering him with burning sand. His heart skipped, his fingers trembled, and for a breath he thought of home. Not of medals or banners, but of his porch at dusk, cats weaving between his legs, the taste of a cheap microwave burrito in his mouth. That absurd normalcy steadied him. He clenched his jaw and kept crawling. The scouts closed in. One approached within 20 meters, its crystalline frame glinting. It raised its weapon, sight fixed upon the faint outline of a man in rags. Time slowed. Vance knew this was the moment. His rifle rose, but the alien's weapon was already glowing, primed to fire. He pulled the trigger. The shot cracked like the sky itself had split, and the scout crumpled backward, its light extinguished. The remaining aliens froze. Fear, not tactical calculation, not irritation, but raw fear, flickered through their ranks. They had never known it before, but now they tasted it, and it soured everything. Zaethal roared, voice breaking like shattered glass. Cowards! He is one man, one relic with powder and lead. Find him, or we are disgraced before the stars. His troops hesitated, for the word disgrace held weight among them heavier than death. Yet still they could not locate the phantom who stalked the dunes. Among the humans, the tension was unbearable. Every crack of Vance's rifle was met with breathless silence before the whispered eruption of awe. Phones streamed live, comments flooding in from around the world. Is this real? No way a bullet beats a plasma shield. Duct tape is God-tier tech confirmed. Chuck Norris trained him. I bet my life on it. Vance ignored the noise. His world had shrunk to the desert, his rifle, and the rhythm of his breathing. Yet the strain was building. Sweat stung his eyes. His shoulder ached with the recoil. Ammunition was finite, and the aliens were closing. He shifted behind a jagged outcrop, reloading with trembling hands. He whispered again, this time half in humor, half in prayer. If I don't make it, somebody clear my browser history. The scouts swept the dunes with coordinated beams now, carving away his cover. Rocks melted, shrubs turned to ash, the sand itself bubbled. The desert was dying around him, yet he remained still, as though daring the earth itself to hold him hidden one moment longer. Then came the break. A scout stumbled too close, its crystalline leg catching against a rock. Vance fired without hesitation. The alien collapsed, shards scattering like jewels across the sand. For a heartbeat, silence followed, and then the scouts faltered, not from strategy, not from discipline, but from dread. They had never faced prey that did not yield, never fought an enemy who laughed at death and hid behind nothing more than cloth and patience. Zaethal staggered forward, voice trembling now with something close to desperation. What are you? From the haze of heat and dust, Vance rose just enough to be seen. His figure was blurred, half shadow, half man, a shape stitched into the fabric of the desert itself. His rifle rested against his shoulder, his hood casting his face into obscurity. His reply was calm, almost mocking. Just a man with bad aim and infinite patience. The words hung like a curse. The scouts recoiled, and for the first time, the Galactic invaders seemed small, towering, armored, and armed with light, yet reduced before the quiet defiance of one man with a battered rifle. When the next shot came, it was not a bullet, but silence itself. The scouts no longer laughed, no longer taunted. They felt the desert close around them, vast and patient, carrying the weight of a species that had always survived mockery and scorned by enduring. And you, reader, must hear what the desert teaches. Power is not in brilliance, nor in weapons that dazzle, nor in voices that mock. Power lies in patience, in the quiet resolve of one who has been underestimated too long. Remember this when laughter surrounds you. Silence, wielded rightly, can be sharper than any blade. Legends are not born in palaces of light, but in places where no one expects them. Dust-choked valleys, forgotten porches, the silence between a heartbeat and a trigger pull. The Galactic Scouts would one day write of their defeat in precise reports and coded laments. but none of their words could capture what happened after the laughter stopped in the desert. The battlefield was scorched glass and shadows. The scouts, proud crystal warriors, had withdrawn into a fractured line, their radiant armor dimmed by fear. They had come expecting spectacle, a swift humiliation of Earth's primitive defense. Instead, they faced a phantom who had broken their certainty shot by shot. Corporal Elias Vance crouched in the lee of a dune, sweat dripping into his eyes, his rifle warm in his hands. He was exhausted, down to his last magazine, yet the silence gave him no peace. He knew the danger was not gone. Retreating enemies were not defeated enemies. They were plotting, calculating. Zaethal, the commander, had not fallen. That meant the fight was not finished. From behind the human barricades, whispers carried across the broken air. He did it. He scared them. Scouts are pulling back. Florida man energy told you. Even laughter now crept into the voices of those who had been trembling before. Yet Vance did not share their relief. His eyes scanned the horizon, and he saw what they could not. The discipline still lingering in alien movements, the careful withdrawal, the way their eyes never left him. They weren't finished. They were testing him. Zaethal raised his hand, and the remaining scouts shifted into formation. Their rifles glowed with a brilliance more furious than before. Not scattered beams, but focused convergence. They meant to pour their combined fire onto a single point, to overwhelm the strange patience that had undone them. Vance adjusted his scope, feeling the last bullets heavy in his magazine. His muscles trembled, his body screaming for rest, but his will tightened like a bowstring. He thought of all the rejections he had carried, friends who left him behind, family who sighed at his quiet oddities, a world that never celebrated him. Now, in this dying stretch of desert, those rejections turned into armor. If he was forgettable, then let him vanish into the dust. If he was mocked, then let him laugh last. The air ignited. The scouts fired together, a storm of burning light that turned the desert into a sea of molten fire. Glass sprayed, dunes collapsed, and the earth trembled. Through it all, Vance pressed himself flat, every nerve alive with terror. Heat blistered his skin, sand turned liquid beneath him, but he did not move. He waited. The desert, scarred and wounded, still wrapped him in its silence. When the barrage ceased, Zaethal stepped forward, convinced the ghost had been burned away. His crystalline frame glistened with cruel triumph. "It is done," he declared. His troops shifted uneasily, their fear still lingering, but his voice carried the command of certainty. Then a crack split the silence. Zaethal froze. A bullet had grazed his shoulder, shattering a piece of crystal into dust. He turned, eyes wide but saw nothing. The desert had fired back. Another shot rang, precise and merciless, and one of his lieutenants fell to the sand. Panic erupted. The formation broke. They scattered, no longer conquerors but prey hunted by the invisible. Vance shifted his position with practiced care, his movements so small they were swallowed by the heat haze. Each shot he fired was chosen, patient, deliberate. He was not wasting bullets. He was shaping fear. The climax of the battle stretched like eternity. Scouts stumbled, fired blindly, screamed orders that went unanswered. Zaethal himself staggered, fury cracking his crystalline form. For every alien who fell, Vance felt the weight of his own exhaustion deepen, yet he refused to stop. His hands ached, his shoulder burned, but he had lived his whole life being told he was not enough. He would not prove them right now. At last, Zaethal found him. Through the heat shimmer, the commander glimpsed the faint silhouette of a man, ragged and dust-caked. With a roar, he leveled his weapon, its glow swelling like a small sun. Vance looked through his scope and met the alien's gaze, two enemies seeing each other clearly for the first time. For a heartbeat, there was no desert, no war, only the certainty that only one of them would leave. They fired together. Light split the air. The bullet cut across it. The dune exploded in a storm of glass and fire. For a moment, no one knew who had fallen. Humans held their breath. Scouts froze in terror. The silence was unbearable. Then the dust cleared. Zaethal lay shattered, crystalline shards scattering like broken promises. His weapon, glowing faintly, flickered and died. Standing above him was Elias Vance, weary, burned, his rifle barrel smoking, his ghillie hood hanging in tatters. He had survived by inches, but survival was enough. The remaining scouts did not attack. They recoiled, eyes wide, their commander fallen. Discipline dissolved into fear. Slowly, one by one, they retreated, their glowing forms shrinking into the horizon. No victory was declared, no trumpet sounded. Only the quiet retreat of an army that had mocked and underestimated and now knew fear. The humans erupted. Cheers, laughter, even tears. Some fell to their knees in relief. Others clapped each other on the back, shouting nonsense about duct tape being humanity's greatest invention. A child, carried on her father's shoulders, asked the question out loud. Is he a hero? The farmer spat again, smiling despite himself. Boy ain't no hero. He's just stubborn as hell. But Vance did not join the celebration. He walked past them in silence, his rifle slung loosely, his body aching with every step. He returned to the town not as a victor, but as himself. On his porch, he sat with a burrito steaming in his hand, a black cat curling against his leg, as if nothing had changed. He chewed slowly, staring at the horizon. And yet everything had changed. Across the galaxy, whispers spread of the ghost of Earth, the man who wielded patience like a blade. Captains spoke warnings, commanders rethought strategies, empires remembered that ridicule could be turned into ruin. Humanity, mocked for its antiquities and chaos, now stood taller, not through fleets or armies, but through the silence of one man. The desert cooled with nightfall, its glass scars glowing faintly beneath the stars. Vance leaned back, weary but at peace, and whispered to himself words he did not expect to carry beyond his porch. Funny how they laughed at rifles. Now the stars are afraid of patience. And you, reader, who carries rejection in your chest and laughter at your expense ringing in your ears, remember this. Your scars are not your shame, but your strength. The world may mock what you hold, call your tools useless, your silence weakness, your patience folly. Yet when the fire burns hottest, when the laughter is cruelest, it is often the overlooked who endure, and it is endurance that outlives empires.